I need you to understand there is a reason why for 19 months no one has brought this up in mainstream media. This is moving in the right direction. This is moving in the right direction. This kind of pressure is good. So I'm not going to cast this aside, but I will warn you that it's still at this stage purely for optics and offers no material penalties to Israel, no significant material penalties to Israel. Meanwhile, I will relitigate something that I have maintained since, you know, everyone is now coming on the it is a genocide actually tip. Once there are now in mainstream media, in Washington Post. Wait, what? What the hell? Okay. A Washington Post journalist wrote an article about how it is a genocide and people should start saying it. Shadi Hamid wrote, a new consensus emerging. Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza. We should say so. Words have meaning, and they should be used when they describe reality. My essay in the Washington Post. This is a Washington Post op-ed. Never in my life did I think that we would actually see a Washington Post op-ed that openly says that Israel is doing a genocide. Okay? That's huge. That is a huge, huge difference. Yes, Shadi Hamid, not exactly a radical leftist, is calling it a genocide in the Bezos own Washington Post. If you haven't started using the term, which at this point is considered factual by mainstream human rights organizations and scholars, it's probably not for a great reason. A tide shift is happening. The people that are better at reading the room, like the Piers Morgans of the world, are taking advantage of the new permission structure that Western nations are giving. Okay, Western nations are giving to their media by saying you can criticize Israel now. That's precisely the reason why you're hearing from more and more people that previously were terrified of the political, social, economic repercussions that they would face. Okay? There is a new permission structure now. You can openly state that Israel is doing a fucking genocide, which is true. It's been true for 19 months. But now you can say it. So you'll hear a lot more people openly coming out and saying it. And when more people openly come out and say it, there will be more pressure. Okay? There will be more pressure upon our politicians to cut ties with Israel. Remember that. Ethnic cleansing has become the official policy of Israel. The nation's leaders are admitting it without apology. There was barely a pretense before, but now there's not even that. And these admissions combined with mass killings on the ground point to something even more horrific. Genocide. Ms. Rachel was the tipping point on our rally. No, it's not Ms. Rachel. It's every single person that has gone out and protested. Every single person has played a role in this. But more importantly, I think that, like, I'm angry. I'm resentful. I want to say, where the fuck were you for 19 months? Okay. But instead of saying, where the fuck were you for the past 19 months? We should look at the silver lining of this. Okay, even if it's a PR initiative, remember, that should cause you to be skeptical of these people in the future. Okay, never forget that. Never forget for 19 months of genocide, 19 months of a live streamed child Holocaust, these people not only actively ignored the reality on the ground, but even basically fucking did the role of offering contextualization to Israel. A much less significant analog here is the Jake Tappers of the world going from actively offering shelter to the Biden administration's senility that everyone could see in broad daylight to then turn around and conduct investigative reporting once it was no longer problematic to do so, once there was no serious harm to your career. Okay? This is exactly what's going on here as well. But this does not mean that we should cast aside these people, not the Jake Tappers of the world, but I mean like the people that are now coming out and saying that it is a genocide. We should be skeptical of them. We should be critical of their intentions. But ultimately, it's still a good thing because it opens up a new pressure valve. Yeah. Abby Wilkinson says, I have a mental catalog of public figures and people I know personally I'll never respect or like ever again, but I think we want to make the barriers to acknowledging and speaking against the ongoing genocide as low as possible. Welcome people through gritted teeth is exactly my point as well. It also does help increase the pressure on the government of the US, UK, Germany, and other Western states, and the only way this can be ended is if those governments are under so much pressure they have to act. There's records of people's complicity and cowardice. That Zadie Smith article isn't disappearing. There's time to litigate this in the future. Yeah. It is gross. It is disgusting that it took almost 20,000 dead children for people in the Western media to finally say, I think there's too much death for me. Okay? But a barrier has been crossed. It is very clear. So when you see people that are also now taking advantage of this new permission structure, don't immediately fucking behave like a gatekeeper or a hipster, okay? I say this as someone who has suffered unimaginable career penalties for this, okay? It is no accident that I have not been invited to a single fucking award show or anything like that. And this is nothing. This is ultimately inconsequential, okay? Tremendous amount of revenue cast aside, losing a third of my audience initially after October 7. But none of that is meaningful, okay? That is all utterly meaningless as opposed to using the existing platform that I had to speak the truth every single day unconditionally, okay? This is why I don't make a big deal, a big show out of all of these things. It is utterly inconsequential, okay? It is utterly inconsequential. So if I'm not complaining about all these people that are coming in once they have more allowance to say the truth, you shouldn't make a big fuss about it either. Truth ? Law. I love that. There are still also hanger-ons that want to believe that the world's and the entire planet's opinion on Israel is not completely negative, and that's always funny. Like the Asmongold followers, the Ethan Klein followers that still are basically operating on this like completely lost boundary. Hasan, what of accountability and justice? So many of those who are going to mea culpa are some of the worst catalysts for this genocide. Oh, make no mistake. That's later. That comes later. Right now, the goal is to keep up the pressure. Okay? Don't fucking worry about that right now. Do not worry about that right now. Yeah. The Asmongold fans, the Tectone fans, the Ethan Klein fans, the Sex Pestiny fans, they're like the Japanese imperial fascist soldier holding on to his forward operating base in the fucking Philippines 39 years after the war ended, you know? They're just holding on. They're like, nope, you're a fucking terrorist. Shut up. You're a terrorist. Fuck you. Here. And while this is happening, I will seek to carve out another permission structure. Okay? As I've said time and time again, I will repeat it. There is no comparison between Israel and Hamas. One is a militant resistance comprised of orphan soldiers born into a 77-year occupation. The other is an ethno-religious supremacist apartheid state with nukes doing a genocide backed by the United States of America, the most powerful nation on the planet. Okay? There is no comparison. These guys are not in the same zip code. There is no both sides in this situation. Okay? While I have said in the past, and understandably that openly mentioned that, yes, there was a deliberate targeting of civilians on October 7, and therefore the October 7 campaign, regardless of the 75-year occupation, was an act of desperation that still can be considered terrorism. Okay? There were atrocities that took place on October 7. Relitigating October 7, 19 months into this genocide, is fucking insane. It is fucking idiotic. No one should ever entertain that. Okay? Absolutely not. And as I said, even on October 8, that October 7 only happened as a direct consequence of 75 years of military occupation and endless displacement and endless death and destruction that Israel has enacted without any scrutiny whatsoever, with full-blown support from Western nations upon the Palestinian civilian population. Another point that I also mentioned here is that Israel, as a belligerent occupier, does not have a right to defend itself by bombing Gaza. It obviously does not have a right to do genocide. No country has that right. No one has a right to do genocide. Israel is doing a genocide that is completely illegal under every metric. But Israel didn't even have a right to bomb Gaza in the way that it did in the aftermath of October 7, because Israel is a belligerent occupier of the Palestinian population. Okay? Palestinians, on the other hand, from the Al-Qassam brigades down to every last Palestinian that chooses to take up arms against the state of Israel, have a legal right to defend themselves against Israel's genocide. Okay? That's also another thing that you have to remind yourself of. But the reason why I brought this up is because the media tide is shifting in the direction of people recognizing the truth about Israel doing a genocide. But since that media tide is shifting, I need you to understand there is a reason why for 19 months no one has brought this up in mainstream media. Okay? No one has brought this up in mainstream media. One must ask the question, why no one has brought this up in mainstream media? Why is it that this is the only place, this is one of the few places in the Western world where you will ever hear this truth? It's not even a fucking falsehood. It's not an exaggeration. It's just simply international human rights. What would have been the proper response to October 7 in your opinion? I mean, I've already said it. Dissolve the apartheid instantly on October 8. That's what I said. I said that on Piers Morgan numerous times. Dissolve the apartheid, end the permanent military occupation, and fire off the negotiations process. All for all, allowing the Palestinians that are under permanent military detention to go free. You say numerous, a weird amount. Okay. Anyway, so Alonso Grimendi actually made a video about this. I'm going to watch it. I have it on the docket. Where is it? Hold on. I had it on the docket. Oh, Israel's genocide at Gaza legal analysis. Is Israel's committing a genocide in Gaza? I mean, it's fucking, it's not very visually appealing, but Alonso says the awfulness of October 7 violence should have led Israel to conclude that the status quo of living in a willful ignorance about their brutal settler colonial project next door had failed. Instead of genocide in Gaza, it should have built partnerships in Palestine to lift the occupation. The idea that the solution to a blockade of Gaza, where every few years hundreds are killed in the mow the lawn operations, would be the genocide of Gaza is stupid, failed policy that only makes sense in a colonial mindset. War does not solve war. Israel had many partners and tools at its disposal on 8/10 to get rid of Netanyahu and its failed policies, announce a new status quo, and plot a credible roadmap to the decolonialization of Israel-Palestine. It instead chose to close the ranks around Netanyahu until the job is done. And the reason why they did that is because there is great appetite for permanent ethnic cleansing of all Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and permanent ethnic cleansing of all Palestinian citizens of Israel as well, eventually. Okay? It's not there yet, but it will get there. Gaza first, West Bank second, and then you move the crosshairs to the Palestinian citizens of Israel within. Because it is an ethno-supremacist fascist principle. That is what Israel is built on. It's Nazi shit through and through. Remember, the reason why Hamas and other armed actors were able to penetrate so deep into Israel was because Netanyahu redirected security priorities to protect the West Bank settlers at the expense of Israel's kibbutz in the south. Netanyahu also supported Hamas for years out of a desire to keep Palestinian nationalism and unity broken and weak, instead of helping to unify it so it could find partners for a decolonialization project that ends the occupation. Instead of holding him accountable for his failure and not keeping Israelis safe, he was rewarded with a get-out-of-jail-free card paid for by the blood of the Palestinian genocide. And then he also abandoned Israeli hostages. So what was Israel supposed to do on October 8th? Well, as Majed Bamia says, if the state of Palestine is expected to remain peaceful after a genocide that killed 55,000 Palestinians, then Israel should have been expected to remain peaceful after October 7 too. Exactly. It could have severely ostracized Hamas and built a large coalition for a new normal in Israel-Palestine. It could have agreed to the release of the hostages quickly, or if you believe Hamas, would not severely delegitimize them and put the pressure on the Palestinian Authority. But settler colonial projects choose to dig deeper into colonialism, and as all colonial projects, it led to genocide. Now comes the time for accountability and decolonization, not as a result of the West's solidarity after 7/10, but as a pariah state abandoned by its allies. It's that simple. So many people died in the process. The idealist in me wants to fucking yell about how many newcomers there are that are finally openly saying the fucking truth. You have this. Benedict Cumberbatch, Dua Lipa, Rizwan Ahmed, Nicola Collin, and more than 300 other public figures have signed Choose Love's letter demanding Keir Starmer and UK's complicity and the UK's complicity in the horrors of Gaza. Yeah. Now, some of these people are active in the pro-Palestinian movement. Okay, many of them are. So I'm not going to say that they haven't done enough. Okay, but there are plenty of newcomers into the fray as well. Obviously, there are a lot of people still that have been actively protesting against their governments, actively protesting since the beginning, and maybe even, and far before October 7, as a matter of fact. But remember, these lists will keep coming out and public pressure will keep building, partially because there is a permission structure that comes with this. When you see more and more people, come out, more famous people come out, then there is power in numbers. People are no longer afraid that they will be cast aside, fired. Like Melissa Barrera, who was fired from the project Scream 6, right? I think it was Scream, right? She was fired from her project initially because in the early days of October in 2023, she had the audacity to post Israeli Holocaust scholar Ross Segal's work in the Jewish Currents magazine that said, "This has the makings of a genocide." She was fired, and they said she was fired specifically because of her anti-Semitic statements, anti-Semitic posts on her Instagram. The post that they were referencing was her reposting a Jewish Currents magazine article from an Israeli Jewish Holocaust scholar, Ross Segal, saying what Israel was doing was a genocide. Think about how fucking insane that is. There were plenty of people who lost career opportunities in the process. There were plenty of people who fucking there were plenty of people who were punished instantly in an effort to silence those in an effort to silence the onlookers, in an effort to say there is no permission structure to say the truth right now. Fuck you. And yet people still fought. They still fought back. Regardless of what the consequences were, they still fought back. And here we are. So make no mistake, I'm not going to look at the situation in front of us. I'm not going to look at the situation in front of us and go, oh, look at these like newcomers. Look at these new allies. Fuck them. I'm not going to forget what they did. I was there. I saw it. Some of them directly were at odds with me. Piers Morgan comes to mind. Okay. But I will take advantage of the fact that there is a new permission structure and these careerists are now openly coming out to make their statements known. It's good. That's a good thing. That's not a bad thing.